Good morning, Comrade Judy.
Good morning, Comrade Dango. How are you this morning?
Well, and you?
All right, thanks.
Where's Comrade Khai?
Morning, Mr. Dango.
Morning. How are
He's
you?
busy. I'm very well, thanks, Mr. Dango. And you?
I'm good.
He's trying to log in. Better person.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Dango.
Alaikum
Is
salam.
Maulana from the
Fadil.
is Maulana Khalil from the
From the strand.
strand? Yes.
From the strand, yeah. Okay. My ancestral home.
This is Chris.
Morning.
Oh, yeah, I'm struggling.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning. Good morning. Sorry, I'm struggling. I've been looking for the link. Only one I find is on the WhatsApp group, not on the emails. Good morning, honorable members.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Good morning to the Minister and all members from the
Recording in progress.
the Select Committee and the Portfolio Committee, our delegates from the provinces, from the legislatures, the officials from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the officials of Parliament and of the committee. Good morning, honorable members. Today we have convened a meeting where we'll be getting a briefing on the AGOA from the Minister. I would like to first start with some apologies that as members of the Select Committee, when we organized the meeting about 2 months ago, before the start of the constituent period, we decided that on the 26th we'll be having this meeting. But last week we were informed that there's a change with regard to the program of the NCOP, that the plenary session that usually started in the afternoon at 1400 hours will now start in the morning at 10. And that committees will then have to start in the afternoon. but it then created a problem for us in that we had arranged also a request from the Western Cape legislature. The Committee of Economic Development has requested that we start the meeting at 8. We agreed to that request because they're having an oversight program in the afternoon. If we were to change them in the afternoon, it was going to disadvantage them. So we have decided that we will continue with our committee meeting from now, and then the NCOP component will then log out and log in to the plenary session, which starts at 10. Honorable Judy Hemmens will then continue with the chairing of the meeting. I hope she's here.
I'm here, Chair. Good morning.
Thank you so much, sir. Good morning, Chair. So we may be coming back individually because of also our responsibilities in the NCOP. We are tabling the reports, but after the reports, we are also participating in the debate on tourism. So as soon as each one of us finish his or her part in the debate, we may join the proceedings this side of the joint committees meeting, depending of just myself. It will take me, when I log out, about more than an hour to come back. So I'm not sure whether by that time the meeting will still be on. Others may not even join because some of them are sweepers. They need to listen to all those that were debating. I know Honorable Dango is a sweeper for the ANC. Honorable Lord is a sweeper for the TA. So they may not be able to come back after 10 to join the meeting at all. Can we then, Ms. Grace, deal with the attendance, and then we ask I was informed that the secretary, the committee secretary from the portfolio committee is not here. The content advisor will deal with the attendance and apologies from the portfolio committee side.
Yes, Chair.
I want to change
Thanks,
the assets in the meantime.
Thanks, Chairperson, and good morning to everyone. From the attendance from the members of the Select Committee, for now we have Ms. Mushodi, we have you, Chairperson, we have Mr. Moimang, we have Mr. Dango, and Ms. Mamarekhane. So far, I have not received any apology from our members. And we received an apology from Free State Portfolio Committee that they will not be with us, and the Northern Cape Portfolio Committee. But we have a list of members from the Western Cape Portfolio Committee led by Ms. Marais, the chairperson. We have Mr. van der Westhuizen, we have Mr. Sileku, Ms. Nkondlo, and Mr. Brenkhuis. And yeah, from the Eastern Cape, we have the chairperson, Mr. Ndamase, and from Gauteng, we have the chairperson in attendance, Mr. Macheke. I think that's all I have for now, Chairperson. I will now hand over to Ms. Sheldon to do the attendance of the Portfolio Committee.
Good morning, Chair.
Through you, Chairperson.
Good morning, Chair. May I proceed?
Please.
We have Ms. Hermans on the platform, Ms. Ntwana, Ms. Shlonyana, Mr. Malamacha, Mr. Mbuyani, and Mr. Mulder and Mr. Bergman. So far, we do not have any apologies.
Thank you very much. Just also changing the gadgets. I couldn't see myself on the other one. Thank you very much. I think
Chair, I'm
Yes.
also here, Monagedi.
Oh, welcome, Honorable. I would like also to express words of condolences to one of our staff members. His mother passed away. So we express our deepest condolences to him. But we have also heard that also one of the members from the NCOP, Honorable Kiva's brother, was brutally murdered yesterday. We also send our condolences as the Joint Committee. This morning, the news of the passing away of the granddaughter of Dad Mandela, Zolega Mandela, has passed away. She was suffering from cancer for a long time. We'd like to express our condolences and pray that God give them strength and courage during this difficult period. Honorable members, without wasting any time, I would like to request the Minister to make a presentation on AGOA. We then allow members to ask questions for clarities, and then we'll have discussion. We welcome everybody on the platform. Thank you, Minister, and over to you.
First, may I greet good morning to you, Chairperson, to all members of the Select Committee as well as the Portfolio Committee. I'd also like to greet the members of the provincial legislatures that are present here today, the staff of Parliament and the officials. And I'd like to join you in conveying condolences to those who have lost loved ones. Chairperson, let me start by thanking you and Chairperson Hermans for the opportunity to speak and engage with the Joint Committee today. We do have a presentation that I'm going to ask that Zulu flights in order to structure and guide the inputs that I want to make. And I am mindful of the time and the need to ensure that the Select Committee members have an opportunity to participate. And so I'm going to try to be as, to go through the presentation as briskly as is possible. And I start, Chairperson, with the observation that the presentation that we have today covers the status of AGOA, that's the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, the renewal or extension of AGOA. And it follows an interest expressed by representatives of a number of provinces and members of Parliament. In fact, I've had an occasion to discuss the matter with three of the premiers, and there is considerable value in developing a common position as a country on matters relating to foreign economic relations. The presentation that I want to share with the committee today, or the joint committees, will cover a number of issues. We'll start off by looking at how South Africa is viewed by trade and other partners, recognizing our strengths, identifying our challenges. I'll briefly deal with the trade policy approach in a fractured and polarizing world, the US-South Africa economic relationship and its significance, the trade framework and the role of AGOA, eligibility under AGOA, what is the criteria and which are the countries that qualify, the key trade and other statistics, the future of AGOA, and the benefits to South Africa of renewal and extension, an African common position that has been developed on AGOA, the next AGOA forum, and next steps in the goal of securing AGOA extension or renewal. Can I then, yes, take us to this slide? And I start by saying that if we look at South Africa in the context of global economic relations and the opportunities that many see in their engagement with us, South Africa is seen as Africa's most diversified and developed market economy with a large industrial base. It's a vibrant democracy with free and fair elections and a force for promoting democratic values and practices in the region. It has a strong and a robust legal system with rule of law, a free press, and strong property right protections. It has a growing skills and technology base that can be utilized to address African challenges, including in the production of critical medical and other products. It has significant deposits of natural resources, including critical minerals that can be vital to the global transition to a greener economy. It has a functioning set of capital markets and modern infrastructure, and is part of a continent that is growing with enormous untapped potential. On the next slide, we deal with a number of the challenges. South Africa is also a young and rapidly urbanizing population whose population growth has outstripped the expansion of the economy. It faces the challenge of extraordinary levels of unemployment, higher for many decades than the unemployment rates of Europe and the United States during the Great Depression. Some 33% of the labor force is unemployed, and if we include discouraged job seekers, the numbers rise to 42%. And if I use the same measure, youth unemployment for those aged 15 to 34 stands at 55%. South Africa has high poverty levels in both urban and rural areas, and one of the world's highest levels of inequality. And we need to step up economic growth levels, diversify our economy, promote economic inclusion, and address the pressing energy shortages. In the context of our global economic relationships, our focus as South Africa can be best captured with 5 core points. The first is to maintain and expand economic relations with all large economies globally, including the United States, the European Union and United Kingdom, the countries that are part of BRICS, the members of ASEAN, those are countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, and others, Japan, the countries of Latin America, and a number of economies in the Middle East. The second one is to expand exports with a shift to value-added products, particularly manufactured products and services. The third one is to promote greater African integration through the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, as the most important growth driver in future. And of these 5, I would particularly focus on African integration as a pressing and important focus of our trade relations. The fourth one is to attract foreign direct investment, particularly in sectors with export potential, as well as in value chains where greater localization is possible, or where technology needs and market access benefits from such investment. And finally, to support a multilateral, rules-based system, whilst focusing on ensuring the rules promote African industrial development. We've put our flag very firmly as a country on promoting multilateralism. This is the idea that countries need to engage by way of agreement in setting the rules that governs global economic relations. Turning next to the South Africa-US relationship, South Africa and the US have a long history of economic relations. Some American companies have been in South Africa for more than 100 years. South Africa values the economic relationship, and it continues to be an important one, capable of being scaled up further. The United States is a significant market for our goods and a key source of investment. The US is South Africa's second largest national trading partner after China. And South Africa is the largest exporter to the United States on the African continent, exporting 3 times more than the next largest supplier, which was Nigeria last year. If we flip the story and we look at South Africa's relationship from a US point of view, we the largest sub-Saharan African importer of goods from the United States, the biggest source of foreign direct investment to the United States from the African continent, and a crucial supplier of raw materials to many American supply chains. Turning next to the firm level relationships, there are more than 600 US firms in South Africa, many using South Africa as a gateway to other African countries. Total two-way investment in 2021 totaled just more than $11.9 billion US dollars. Of the $7.4 billion was in US investment into South Africa, while South African firms in turn invested $4.5 billion in the United States. Dividend flows from American investment in South Africa resulted in income for US companies of about $1 billion in 2021. In a number of critical minerals that we've studied, South Africa is a significant exporter to the United States. And these would be products like manganese, platinum, rhodium, and many others. The relationship between South Africa and the United States is significant beyond solely the trade and investment areas that I have highlighted, and it embraces several other dimensions, including political relationships, tourism, cultural and education ties, technology partnerships, and joint efforts to combat terrorism and in peacekeeping efforts on the African continent, which is part of building a safer world. The growing geopolitical polarization poses challenges to South Africa, a country that has strong economic relationships with both West and East, and whose economic challenges require us to maximize our trade and investment relationships with countries across the geopolitical divides. South Africa's trade strategy, therefore, argues against fragmentation and in favor of multilateralism. We favor the resolution of conflict through peaceful means, but we also favor that the world should keep on trading and investing with each other. I turn next to the South Africa-US trade framework. South Africa exports products to the United States under 3 trade regimes. The first one is the multilateral agreements. These are reciprocal. In other words, the US has certain obligations and South Africa has certain obligations. They are normally referred to as most favored nation terms, or MFN, and they're governed by the rules of the World Trade Organization. The second trade regime is a unilateral one. In other words, it's implemented by the American government without a direct agreement by South Africa to grant reciprocal access. And this is a preferential market access under the Africa Growth and Opportunities Act. That's AGOA. The third one is a unilateral preference under the Generalized System of Preferences. I'll refer to it as the GSP program. AGOA itself, which is the main focus of the discussion, was introduced in May 2000, and it was for a time-bound period to 2008. Initially, it was seen to be an 8-year program that would provide support to sub-Saharan African countries. It was extended before it expired to September 2015. And then it was extended again in 2015 to expire in 2025. So we're basically in the third term of the AGOA program. AGOA's extension requires a decision of the US Congress, and it's therefore signed, and it's once Congress has made such a decision, it's signed into law by the US President. GSP, which I referred to earlier, expired in December 2020 and has had to date not yet been renewed by the US Congress. But in terms of current American legislation, access to AGOA continues to provide access to GSP for sub-Saharan African countries. South Africa and 34 other sub-Saharan African countries are currently eligible for preferential access for certain specified goods to the American markets under the terms of AGOA. AGOA provides duty-free product coverage for 1,835 products. Under GSP, there's an additional 3,400 products, and collectively, AGOA, together with GSP, provide duty-free market access to just over 5,000 tariff lines from sub-Saharan African countries classified as developing countries. There's a different number for what is called LDCs, that's least developed countries. I turn next to AGOA eligibility criteria. To qualify for AGOA, a country should meet a number of criteria that's set out in American law. They cover things like market-based economies, rule of law, political pluralism, elimination of barriers to American trade and investment, protection of intellectual property, and clauses that require countries either not to have nationalized or expropriated property of US citizens or corporations, or provide effective compensation. Eligible countries should also meet GSP criteria, which covers the economic development status of a beneficiary country. And there's a criteria that's set out. The GNI per capita is set at the lower bound of the World Bank's definition of high-income country. And once you reach that, there's a mandatory graduation. You move out of AGOA. The other criteria covers that you don't undermine American national security and foreign policy interests, and you don't engage in gross violation of human rights. Turning next then to the eligible countries. There are 49 sub-Saharan African countries. All of them potentially qualify for AGOA. Sudan and Somalia have not applied to join AGOA, so they don't benefit from AGOA. Two countries, Equatorial Guinea and Seychelles, were graduated out of GSP due to them being classified by the World Bank as high-income countries. So once the average gross national income was taken into account, in other words, the per capita, the per person income, if you reach that level, then you no longer qualify. So that reduces the list by a further 2. Then there were 10 countries that were excluded from AGOA, countries that the US believes don't qualify on the grounds of human rights, rule of law, forced labor, or political pluralism, among others. And there's a list of those 10 countries highlighted there, and honorable members will take note of them. And then South Africa's status was raised in previous years by American interest groups. Some of them said, well, South Africa may not qualify based on level of economic development criteria. Others raised dispute about market access for American poultry into South Africa. We were able in prior years to address those concerns and to continue to qualify notwithstanding those concerns. If I look next at our trade under AGOA, depending on the source, there are SA statistics and American statistics, but generally speaking, two-way trade, that's goods and services between the two countries, amounted to $25.5 billion US. And that covers all trade between South Africa and the United States. So it covers trade under the rules of the World Trade Organization, plus AGOA trade, plus trade under the generalized system of preferences. And it's not only the products, but also services, financial services, tourism, all sorts of services that are counted. Last year, as I indicated previously, the US was South Africa's second largest national export market after China. If we take economic blocks, then the EU, of course, is bigger, and the African market is also very, very significant. In 2021, so we've used two sets of periods. In some cases, we refer to 2021 data, in other cases, 2022 data, partly to show the significant shifts between years, and the use of AGOA varies by period. But if I take 2021, the total goods that we exported to the United States was $15.4 billion. 82% of that was under the World Trade Organization rules, what we call the most favored nation terms, and that accounted for an export value of $12.7 billion US, which was quite a significant part of the overall trade. 18% was under AGOA and GSP programs with an export value of $2.7 billion US. In 2022, exports of goods dropped by 4% to $14.4 billion, though exports under AGOA and GSP together grew to about just over 25% of total exports. Between 2018 and 2022, total exports to the US accounted for 8% of all South Africa's exports. And if we look at AGOA, it accounted for 1.7% of South Africa's global exports. Exports under AGOA and GSP together accounted for just over 2% of total South African global exports. On slide number 14, we look at the AGOA preferences. They vary by product, so they're not the same effective level of preference, and the preference is determined by what the tariff level is on products in the United States, because we then get effectively exempted from that tariff. We get duty-free access, and so where the tariff is very high, the benefit to South Africa is very significant. Where the tariff is lower, the benefit is more marginal, but in some cases still quite important in a very competitive environment. For vehicles, which is the largest single export item under AGOA, the preference is effectively 2.5%. For fruit, vegetables, and flowers, it averages at about 1.2%. But if we look at specific products, some agriculture and food products can range from 9% to 42%. There's a top 10 list of export products under AGOA, and honorable members will see the automotive category is the most significant at $1.4 billion US, followed by ferroalloys, citrus, jewelry, nuts, other chemicals, wine, engine and turbines, ketones, and ships and boats. This slide provides data on 2022. I had previously cited in the detailed breakdown under the different categories data for 2021. This brings the 2022 data to focus. And if honorable members were to look at the first column, it's exports to the US under the different categories of agriculture, manufacturing, mining, other. And right at the bottom, it says share of total. And then the second column is trade under the most favored nation status, meaning this is not under the AGOA rules. In 2022, it accounted for about 73% of the total, whereas trade under the two preferences of AGOA and GSP accounted for 27%. The next slide will then illustrate this, where the orange, dark orange would be trade under AGOA. The dark green would be trade under the generalized system of preference, and the lighter green, which is on the top, would be the trade under the rules of the World Trade Organization. And the dotted line will show AGOA's share of the total. So honorable members will see, for example, in 2013, it reached a high point of 31% of our exports. In the year 2020, which was the COVID year, it dropped to 10%, and it's climbed again to 21%. That's only AGOA without counting GSP. The next slide looks at the future of AGOA. Future participation in AGOA is governed by two key processes. The first is annual reviews of eligibility, which countries continue to meet the criteria. And then the second one is renewal of AGOA beyond 2025. So annual reviews, it's a requirement of the US Congress that the Office of the US Trade Representative conducts an annual review. They can also do what is called out-of-cycle reviews, and they're currently busy with a review, and the report is expected in November 2023. On the matter of renewal or extension of AGOA, the US Congress has not yet set a date for a decision on the future of AGOA. Given the political divisions in the US Congress, it's in South Africa's interest to secure a bipartisan consensus in the United States to secure the necessary backing. A bipartisan consensus would mean getting the support of both the Democrats and the Republicans in the approach towards AGOA. African countries seek a renewal of AGOA as a key means to promote African industrialization and market access to the US. So that frames it from our point of view. There's benefits to the extension of AGOA. I haven't listed all of the benefits, just took a few to illustrate it. For sub-Saharan African countries, preferential access to the US market is available directly through AGOA, and also indirectly through regional value chains for different products. So it allows countries to export to what is still a very significant consumer market and a leading driver of demand across the world. There are opportunities for job creation and economic development for sub-Saharan African countries. AGOA can be a platform to move countries and firms up the value chain in manufactured products. And one of the benefits of AGOA is that it has a signaling effect for American firms that assist with attracting foreign direct investment to African economies. For the United States too, there are benefits to having AGOA as a program. There are geopolitical and strategic factors. It gives the US an opportunity through the AGOA program to take its geopolitical interests into account. The American economy has access to critical minerals, to value chains on the African continent, and to investment opportunities. Sometimes American products are exported to the African continent. It's reworked here. Some of it is sold back to the United States. Some is sold elsewhere. So there's also the benefit to American industry. And of course, American investment opportunities with companies investing in South Africa off the back of the opportunities to utilize AGOA. There's benefits to American consumers with cheaper products entering the market. And it's a very organized way to contribute to African economic development. Most big economies now want to be active in a pro-Africa program, and AGOA provides that for the US. China has its one through FOCAC. Japan has one, a number, the European Union, many others have programs dealing with their relations with the African continent. South Africa's participation under AGOA also brings benefits. The benefits to South Africa are similar to that set out in the previous slide. South Africa benefits with jobs in agriculture and manufacturing. And at the time when it is important to boost job creation, AGOA provides an important opportunity. It also helps us to ensure that we don't only export raw materials in the form of minerals, but that we have access to global markets for manufactured goods. AGOA helps us with export earnings and with economic development, which is crucial given the need to expand growth and job creation. In addition to those benefits that South Africa obtains, there's a question of regional development. South Africa's participation in AGOA supports and benefits economic development in other Southern African countries. Neighboring countries provide a number of key inputs that is then reworked in South Africa and exported to the United States under AGOA. For example, I've indicated that our single biggest item is vehicles, cars, that we export to the United States under AGOA. Botswana provides a number of the wire harnesses that goes into the vehicles. Lesotho provides the car seats. Cote d'Ivoire provides the rubber that goes into the tires. So we see an ecosystem that's developed with AGOA. On strategic goals, South Africa plays a key role in promoting peace and stability on the African continent. And that helps everybody. It helps African citizens, which is, of course, the most important reason why we do it. It promotes intra-African trade, but it also helps countries like the United States that relies on the continent for raw materials. Talking of raw materials, in the area of critical minerals, the US sources a number of critical minerals from South African suppliers and neighboring countries via South Africa's infrastructure. There's a particular market access issue. The United States, South Africa has an anti-dumping duty on poultry from a number of different countries. In the case of the United States, we've agreed to a poultry quota that's available outside of the anti-dumping duty. And that will be in place while South Africa is a beneficiary of AGOA. And then finally, South Africa is the biggest user of AGOA preferences on the African continent. And the AGOA program will be less effective without South African participation. Now, I said earlier that we value the relationship with the United States. It's an important economic relationship. And to promote and expand South African-US economic relations, a number of steps have been taken. I identify 6 significant ones. We've had direct discussions between the heads of state, President Biden and President Ramaphosa, on the strategic relationship. And these discussions have taken place over a number of years. There's been engagement at ministry level with the Office of the United States Trade Representative. That's the equivalent of the trade ministry in the US cabinet. So they call my counterpart the USTR. And in addition to that, and those discussions have taken place from 2019 to 2023 during this administration with a number of meetings. We've also had meetings with other cabinet members in the United States, like the US Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Agriculture and of State. The South African government discussions with US congressional representatives. We've engaged senators and House representatives, both Democrats and Republicans. We've had a South African high-level delegation to the United States in July 2023 to address economic, geopolitical, and commercial matters. There's been presidential and ministry-led engagement with the US private sector. Most recently, the president had a business roundtable with a number of companies coordinated with the United States Chamber of Commerce, and this took place about a week or so ago. There's been business-to-business partnerships and strong links between the labor unions of both countries. I turn next to the African position on AGOA. AGOA, of course, is not a preference specifically for South Africa. It's a preference that applies to sub-Saharan African countries. And so in working on the extension of AGOA, the US Congress will take a view on American relations with the continent as a whole. Honorable members will know that President Biden had a leader summit in December last year, and that gives an indication that there's very much an attempt to think of the continent as a whole. African trade ministers met in 2021 and in 2022 to develop a common position on the future of AGOA. The discussions considered the successes and the challenges faced by exporters. A number of value chains were identified as critical. African countries, following this review, unanimously decided to advocate for the extension of AGOA. AGOA can complement African actions on the AfCFTA, and in the view of African trade ministers, must drive industrialization. South Africa was then nominated to put forward the African case on the extension of AGOA, and we did so. I went to Washington in December 2022 and put forward that case with US congressional representatives and US administration officials to set out why we felt it would be helpful for AGOA to be continued for a further period. On the next slide, we indicate some of the areas that we've looked at. First, to consolidate AGOA, and that is a call for the extension of AGOA for 10 years, to have an early renewal of AGOA, to boost investor confidence and get more investment on the African continent, to retain all existing beneficiary countries, and to remove trade restrictions from African products that otherwise qualify under AGOA, but are affected by other restrictions that the US has in place. We've looked at expansion and improvements on the product scope and the administrative rules, on beneficiary countries, on supportive measures with deeper private sector investment that complements trade access, and on economic inclusion, focused our efforts to bring in more small and medium enterprises, more women and youth-led enterprises. And there's been some good examples in South Africa of transformation where a growing number of South Africans, including Black farmers, are able to access the benefits under AGOA. I want to turn next to the AGOA Forum. an annual AGOA forum is normally held, and it alternates between the US and the African continent. The last physical meeting held on the African continent was in 2019 in Cote d'Ivoire. It was just before COVID. Subsequently, we held virtual meetings due to COVID-19, and a short physical meeting was held in Washington last year. South Africa was nominated by African countries to host the next AGOA forum, which is scheduled for 2023. And on the 20th of September, I had a meeting in Washington with US Trade Representative Ambassador Catherine Tai, and we agreed formally that South Africa would host the 20th AGOA forum, and we released a joint statement to launch the hosting. The AGOA forum will take place from the 2nd to the 4th of November in Johannesburg. This slide just sets out the press statement, the joint statement that my colleague and I issued, in which we confirm the hosting of the AGOA forum. We point to a number of elements that will be part of the forum, and what we expect to achieve. On the next slide, we've just included a tweet from the United States counterpart confirming the details of the discussion and some background information that is contained in the press release. On the next slide, we indicate some of the work that we've done. The most important thing is to develop, always in matters like this, a strong and common South African position, uniting all of society around the call for an extension and showcasing the South African value proposition. This is very important because in matters of international economic diplomacy, we close ranks, we stand together as South Africans, and we have all South Africans promoting access to AGOA. The differences between business and labor is set aside, and they work together on promoting AGOA. Political party differences are set aside, and we speak with one voice in putting forward why it is in our country's interest to have the extension of AGOA. The DTIC hosted a technical MINMAC with provincial heads of department on the AGOA forum. We hosted a provincial AGOA beneficiary dialogue to engage both existing and potential South African exporters on AGOA. These were held in Gauteng, KZN, Limpopo, and the Western Cape. And discussions have been held with NEDLAC partners on AGOA, and both business and labor delegates have taken part in engagement with American counterparts. They've lobbied strongly. They've gone to the United States to help fly the South African flag on AGOA. The next slide is really wrapping it up into the next steps that we're taking. In September, there's a review of AGOA by African ambassadors in the United States, and South Africa will be taking part in that discussion. In October, there will be engagement with South African business community on AGOA opportunities. In November, there's the hosting of the 20th AGOA forum and engagement with members of the US government, what is called the US administration, with Congress, and with other African countries. And then following the AGOA forum, right through to 2024, we'll have further engagement with provincial and with business and labor stakeholders to prepare for scaling up in the use of AGOA and to strengthen common messaging. There'll also be AGOA beneficiary dialogues with the remaining 5 provinces and specific meetings on request. For example, the Western Cape Standing Committee has proposed engagement with the citrus industry, and I know we've already engaged with the auto industry that will affect Gauteng and Eastern Cape and KZN. There's meetings of African trade ministers to consider further lobbying efforts, a joint African set of meetings with the US administration counterparts covering potential refinements to AGOA and possible dates for congressional decision. There will be bilateral meetings with members of Congress. And then finally, the next AGOA forum to be held in the United States in 2024 with an expectation of clarity on the AGOA renewal timeframes. So that sets out the actions going forward. Honorable co-chairs, that sums up the briefing that we had wanted to provide to members of the two committees. I'm really quite appreciative that a joint meeting was possible, because this matter is of interest, of course, to both committees that the department is accountable to, and therefore it has been enormously helpful to have this opportunity. I'd also like to thank, in particular, the chair of the Select Committee for encouraging provinces to take part in this discussion, and the discussion with provincial representatives is an important way also of activating the opportunities for businesses in each province to utilize the AGOA benefits. So thank you very much, Chairperson, and may I then hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Minister. I want to just request going forward that I switch off my camera. My computer's telling me my network is unstable. So if I may do that. Members of both committees, you are welcome to interact with this presentation. We thank you, Minister, for this presentation. I also see that the MEC, the Gauteng MEC, Honorable Motara, has joined us. So you are welcome to the meeting. So I'll take hands now, members. For interaction, I see Honorable Dango, and then Honorable Mari, Honorable Moimang, Malamacha. Okay, I'm taking the hands down. Bergman, Van der Westhuizen, Honorable Kondlo, Honorable Mbuyani. Okay. Honorable Dango.
Yes, Chairperson, thank you very much. And thank you for the Minister for giving us such an extensive and enlightening presentation. It informs us of what we in fact need to do and what we have to do. Chairperson, I've recently come back from a visit to Germany. Now, they have a federal constitution, but I learned a new word there in Germany. Amongst those federal states, they have crafted a word called co-opetition, that is cooperative competition, that they don't compete with one another as such in the national interest. So I think that is important to understand. And I think the second issue that the Minister has highlighted is a bipartisan approach to the US. And I think I want to appeal to South Africans that we also have a bipartisan approach when we're dealing with the issues of trade and other matters such as that on the international arena and fora. Having said that, I think we talk about a nationalism, an inclusive nationalism, and what I want to encourage here, and amongst our provinces in particular, is that we adopt the spirit that I found in Germany of cooperative competition rather than competition for the sake of competition. Because as you can see, that the largest exports under AGOA is from Gauteng and the Eastern Cape. So I don't think we should go into where people benefit more, where they benefit less. I think we should look at how South Africa SADC, and Africa benefits from AGOA. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mari.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to get an indication before asking my questions whether you had a limit on the number of questions we should ask so as not to prejudice others for this round.
No, we don't have a limit, but we just ask for reasonableness given the challenges of the Select Committee in terms of time. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Chair, my first question at this point is, how likely is it that South Africa will be included in the next AGOA agreement? If we could get clarity on that. And if it would be possible to get a little bit more detail as well in terms of how our exclusion from AGOA, and I say our, I mean South Africa, would undermine development in Africa and the SADC, and if I could get the particulars on how. And then for this round, Chair, what were and currently remain the risks to South Africa's inclusion in AGOA, and how have these been addressed? Also just noting the geopolitical tensions that have been at play between the US and South Africa, the threat of graduation, and the increasing move towards protectionism of economies around the world. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Moimang.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to yourselves and the Minister and my colleagues on the platform. Just two from my side. The first one, just building in terms of what Honorable Dango has indicated. Recently, with the hosting of BRICS, it became quite clear that the Communist Party of Russia, which is the opposition in Russia, and the ruling party led by President Putin, when it comes to position on international relations issues, there's one common message emerging out of that country. Now the question is informed by some of the verses that were made by some of the provincial leaders, particularly the opposition in the country, creating an impression that there are divergent views in terms of our position on AGOA. Of course, I'm impressed by the both technical and meaningful engagement between the minister and some of the provinces. What message can we give to our country, particularly in terms of the need to articulate a common position that the minister has so adequately espoused in terms of the evolution of the South Africa-American relations, how that relations was translated and transported to AGOA and other three regimes that govern the SA trade relations, such that there should be no confusion to our communities that as a country we are in charge in terms of the trade relations between ourselves and also America. But other than that, also other countries, whether it is the East and also the continent itself. The second one relates to the interaction that the minister has had with the trade minister of America in relation to the preparations for AGOA, which will be held this year. There are three areas that I wanted to canvass the minister's views on, particularly in terms of the scenario on which AGOA could be extended. One could be we keep, which obviously I think from what the minister has indicated, that the view is that there is a general consensus from the African continent that we need to extend AGOA. So the first scenario would be to keep the same terms and renew AGOA. The second scenario is there room and what will be the likely impact if we do nothing and we let AGOA expire. The third one will be let AGOA go and then reimagine the US-Africa relations in terms of what we had prior to AGOA in 2000. Those are my questions, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malamacha.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, colleagues. Let me take this opportunity to also support Comrade Dango to say a very good presentation, comprehensive for that matter, very simple to understand and also follow the readiness of how prepared are we to host the AGOA. Now, Chairperson, you'll understand that at some stage during the BRICS, this question trended for some times where we saw the likes of Putin not attending. Now, coming to the issue of AGOA, it's very clear. It's not specifically for South Africa. It includes African states. Just across the border, they're sanctioned by US to Zimbabwe. Now, how much sure that at no stage South Africa is not going to be compelled to only receive assistance on the basis that certain states are to be named a state that South Africa must not do any trade of some sort with, because one way or another, they are not in good terms with US, if I have to be specific in that way. That will be the first one, which is not far from the second one to say, with this alignment of some sort that is accomplished by a lot of coup d'etat, one way or another, passive coup d'etat, are we not going to be also be forced to not have solidarity of some sort where, because of AGOA, we can't assist the neighboring states? I think I said, let me pose those two questions in that context, because in many cases, we do get these offers, then they come with a lot of difficult conditions where in a practical way, a brother is forced to hate a brother on the basis that the brother is sponsored somewhere. Then the last one will be whether it's gonna be led by the head of state. Then the question will be, would we expect to see Joe Biden himself in the country? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Bergman.
Chair, thanks very much. And I think mine's also following on from Honorable Malamacha. In terms of there being a cost benefit to AGOA, I think we have to understand that with AGOA, there obviously does come some trade-offs. What we've tried to do in the past, I think we've tried to laugh them off and say that we're not afraid of the West or the free countries, and that we have loyalty to, let's say, the East, or what's traditionally known as the East. And I think we have to be honest that this is a political issue. It's not just an economic issue, and it has a lot of ministers involved in this. And it's not just one minister that can control what happens with AGOA. So we've had political utterances, we've had jeopardized relationships with the US based on us being who we support in the war, or based on us being grey listed. These are all things that can have an impact on AGOA. The problem now is in the sobering time where we have to now, I don't want to say beg, but where we have to come cap in hand and ensure that we don't injure our economy any further. We do have to ensure that our ministers are singing off the same song sheet, or that our entities are at least also stabilizing the ship, so to speak. And I'm not sure how Minister Patel is going to ensure that this takes place, because we're now in the scoring phase of where we got to get Congress to see that Africa is serious about trying to keep AGOA. This is where the utterances count. And it's important that, we look serious about trying to end the grey listing, and we look serious about trying to keep good relationships with the US. So one of the things I've been surprised about is that one of the slides said that we are the custodians of the continent for terrorism, for anti-terrorism. Well, to date, I think our efforts have been quite shocking. In SADC and Mozambique, I think it was only when Rwanda came in that the efforts were really shown to be strong. So I think we have to, we want to rather be kicked out of AGOA because we were more like Seychelles than because we South Sudan or Zimbabwe. And again, as as my honorable colleague said before, we also have to be careful on how SADC, who tells us what we can or can't do in SADC, because our intra-Africa trade, I'm quite big on the fact that our intra-Africa trade has to be stimulated. We have to improve on our intra-Africa trade. And I'm sure AGOA is going to want to see that intra-Africa trade stimulated, because I think it's going to have benefit for AGOA as well. And so when the minister goes to, again, to negotiate, and I know that there's been other parties that have negotiated with America as well to save AGOA, I'm sure he's going to want to put in there that our free trade agreement is going to be favorable for multilateral relationships with the US. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable van der Westhuizen.
Good morning, everybody. Morning, Chair, and thank you, through you, to the Minister. Chair, the Minister was quoted in the media as fearing that South Africa would be exited from AGOA, similar to Seychelles, due to our per capita GDP being too high. Now, this came at a time when our per capita GDP, both in real and dollar terms, are actually decreasing. But this argument by the Minister created the impression that he may not be serious to lobby for the continued inclusion of South Africa in AGOA. Yet today, Mr. Patel clearly indicated that the advantages to our economy is vast. So my question one is he still fearing that South Africa will be exited due to our GDP being too high? And lastly, Chair, may I point out that some of the biggest beneficiaries of AGOA are situated in some of our poorest and most rural areas. And I'm particularly referring to the export of agricultural products, such as citrus, where Limpopo is leading, then the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. And up our west coast, where we've got low rainfalls, some towns such as Citrus Dal is really dependent on the citrus export. Now, my question is, could that argument that the goals of AGOA, meaning to develop the most undeveloped areas, be used as an argument in support or to strengthen our future inclusion in AGOA? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kondlo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to the colleagues, and also good morning to the Minister and his team. I will also want to join other members to thank the Minister for a very detailed presentation that helps us to understand and contextualize our relations with the US in as far as AGOA is concerned. And I think the first one, I think for me, if we understand AGOA as explained as a unilateral and thus non-reciprocal, as I think the slide mentioned, preferential market access, surely I think there are issues that we need to consider, and in particular because already we're told that I think we're in the third iteration of the review of AGOA relations, taking note of, I think, what other members have raised, including Member Enriquez, about the GDP of South Africa, which is an issue that I think Minister mentioned has been raised within the different lobby groups in the US, particularly because this is a non-reciprocal kind of a dispensation. And I think already there lies that particular risk. And I think at one point, Minister, you were indicating that those countries that would form part of AGOA, one of the things that is always there is that as they graduate, because when their situation changes, obviously there's a particular understanding that they would graduate out of AGOA. Now, one thing I just want to understand is that if we're to look at what is contained in those requirements, between ourselves and the US under AGOA, do we have any indicators that we are right at a point where we are supposed to be considered as a country that is graduated out of that preferential understanding or conditions that AGOA provides? But second to that, I'm also interested, I think, to really point or support the notion that I think it would be important to support what a minister is raising around aligning AGOA to the intra-Africa trade, because I would think the future of sustaining AGOA in South Africa, will be through, the biggest basket that I think can be also put in onto the table, as an interest to a bigger market of the US that will then amplify, our own market in South Africa. And I think the work that Minister says they are doing with in SADC and also amongst the other African leaders is very important. And I would want Minister once again to just indicate to us the intent, particularly in as far as his colleagues in the continent, because I think we were all appreciative of the Africa's free trade agreement that all African heads of states are supporting. And I think if AGOA is also placed as part of that conversation, it actually, when we go back to the negotiation with the US, gives us an even a bigger advantage other than ourselves as the South African market, considering all the other issues that could be a risk to only place AGOA as only a benefit to the South African market. So I think those would have been my two comments, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mbuyane.
Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity. Chair, let me first welcome the presentation. It's very much comprehensive and informative. Chair, it is quite clear that South Africa needs the extension of the AGOA and the continued relation with the US for the growth of the South African economy. What are the broader consequences for South Africa's reimagined industrial policy should this not be extended? Secondly, Chair, should AGOA not be extended, what mitigation measures does the government have in place to manage the impact? There are concerns raised about the intellectual properties of nations to qualify for eligibility. The concerns raised by US include copyright laws in South Africa. In slide 17, does this requirement not have the effect to undermine the sovereignty of the nations, particularly their rights to self-determination? The other one, Chair, how does the department intend to resolve the concerns around the access for US poultry into South African market without compromising the South African attempt to protect local poultry production and support for local farmers? I'll pause there for now. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable High.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and thanks to the Minister for the presentation. Some of my questions have been asked by colleagues before me, But I would like just to emphasize on the point of the graduation out of AGOA because of the GDP. I just want to find out from the minister if during the high-level discussion with the leadership of US, whether the matter was raised and also how we've responded to that. But also, if we were to be terminated out of our participation is terminated, what would be the risk also for other sub-Saharan countries, given that South Africa is regarded as a gateway to these other sub-Saharan African countries? The next question is, I think, is also Honorable Mbuyane has touched on it, the mitigation. Given that even if we succeed now, the extension could be of 10 years, but it is reviewed annually, particularly around the issue of graduation. At some stage within this 10 years, we could be graduated out of AGOA, and therefore what will be our mitigation with regard to that to avoid the impact? The just one question is on the WTO rules. To what extent does this AGOA affect the WTO rules? There's something I also read on the report of US that one of the issues that it is against are issues of subsidies, and we do a lot of that in terms of our departments, the DTIC and its entities, small business development, tourism. But it's one of the issues that I think US, something that I read, is also against. But also the other question would be the fact that the GSP has not been reviewed since 2020. What effect does it have on our trade, as well? Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. Chair, just a few questions, and I think also when you are that far back down on the line, some of the questions may have been asked, and I think Honorable Mbuyane has asked one or two of my questions. But the AGOA deal has been linked to our non-aligned position, to what I would see as a proxy war being fought in the Ukraine. We've had visits from different interest groups. We know that members from a political party in South Africa has visited, as well as our own delegation has been to the USA to convince the USA on retaining South Africa within the AGOA agreement. So my question with regards to those visits, has the different visits conflated issues, raised conflicting issues? Have those different visits improved our position in terms of remaining in AGOA? And so how successful has that negotiation been? Then secondly, has there been any scenario planning, forecasting done by the department to mitigate South Africa coming out of AGOA? I think this is also similar to what Honorable Mbuyane has asked. So any mitigating plans if SA is to come out of AGOA? And then leading on to this, trading with, so if for example that were to happen, that South Africa does come out of AGOA, when we look at our trading with the Africa Continental Free Trade areas in Africa, this also has the potential to grow the African economies exponentially. So what forecasting has there been in terms of the effect of the potential inter-African trade growth, the trade growth of African countries on their economies, and more specifically, South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Khalil.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and good morning. And good morning to all the colleagues. Yes, let me also join Honorable Dango in saying that this has been a very informative and exciting presentation by Honorable Minister Ibrahim Patel. And thank you very much for that presentation. I think that it's already a very positive indication that since the 20th AGOA Forum is going to be held in South Africa, Johannesburg, in November 2023 this year, I think there's already a positive indication that AGOA is a piece of, which is actually a piece of legislation from the USA, that it will probably be still be in place for the next foreseeable future. My question is on the forum for November, that per province, how many delegates per province will be invited to that forum? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Matseke.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and let's thank Minister Patel for a very detailed presentation. I deliberately did not want to make an input. However, I was motivated by inputs from colleagues who have made comments, especially as it relates to our current status as South Africa in terms of our AGOA participation and moving forward. And I want to really encourage Minister Patel, because it's clear that there's been an ongoing political deliberations in different forums. And I want to encourage the Minister to continue to have those particular discussions, because it's very clear with the numbers that the Minister will have presented before us today, that we are benefiting out of this current relationship that we have and our participation in AGOA. And like the latter speaker will have indicated, that it's also encouraging that the AGOA forum will be held in Johannesburg, in Gauteng, and we are looking forward to really hosting the delegates in Gauteng. Take into account that Gauteng contributes quite substantially in terms of the automotive industry, and we are expanding quite well, and we are investing quite a lot of money in terms of the automotive industry, and we can't wait to really host the AGOA forum come November in Gauteng. Lastly, we must never be clouded by the expansion of the BRICS country members, because at the moment, everything that has to do with BRICS is still at its infancy. We still need to really participate on AGOA, and we really need the Eurozone in terms of our trade. So it's important that we must really encourage the minister and support the expansion not expansion, the extension of AGOA for the next 10 years, where South Africa will be a partner to. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I see no further hands. It's quite an extensive list of questions and clarities and some are comments. Minister, over to you for responses. Thank you.
Well, first, thank you very much, Chairperson. I think the 12 members of Parliament from both houses and from provincial legislatures who commented and put questions shows the great interest across the two houses and provinces in AGOA. And I appreciate what I think has been a very supportive and collegial tone that has come in all of these comments and questions. Many of the issues that have come up have been, there's a common set of matters that have been raised, and I'm going to try to deal with them broadly in the order that they've come, meaning that I'll try to deal a bit more exhaustively with some of the issues at the start, and then run a little bit more briskly through issues where they've broadly repeated the same matters. So I think Honorable Dango and a number of other members spoke about the importance of South Africa in matters like this, having a bipartisan approach, building a common view. And I think all of my engagement with all the different provinces outside of this meeting has shown a common commitment by different parts of society to this idea that we should speak with one voice and have one broad message, and I do really appreciate that. On the matters raised by Honourable Marie, first, thank you very much, Honourable Marie, for the issues you've raised. You asked how likely is it that South Africa will be included, and what are the risks to inclusion? It's a question that was also picked up by a number of members who asked the question, what is our sense in the discussions we've had with the Americans? So let me deal first with the risks with these things. The first risk with the extension of AGOA is US domestic pressures. There's been a significant move away in the United States from an earlier period where the US favored new trade agreements. In the last 7 years or so, we've seen a greater focus in the United States on its own market, a greater focus on seeking to build a Buy American campaign and to reindustrialize their own economy. There's a bigger focus on localization now in the United States. And that means, so for example, when GSP came up for renewal, it was at the time when the political mood domestically in the United States didn't favor these kinds of things. So that is a risk that we must bear in mind. The second risk is geopolitics. As the world becomes more divided, particularly the technology leadership race between, on the one hand, the United States and on the other hand, on China, there is the danger that one or more countries and blocs will begin to take a fairly short-sighted geopolitical view. It may come from any of the different parties in these things. So that's a second risk that we need to bear in mind. On the first risk of the domestic politics in the United States, what we've done is we've done quite a bit of engagement with American industry and American political leadership to show how the economic relationship with the African continent is actually a critical part of America's own reindustrialization. America is dependent on critical minerals from other parts of the world, and a big part of it is from the African continent. And so it's not just a one-way economic relationship where we have access to the American market. It's also one where America has been able historically to rely on raw materials from the African continent. And in our discussion, we are focused on the need for African industrialization, or what we call beneficiation, to get more American companies to invest here on the continent in the processing of our own raw materials, so that in fact we have a greater job creation, GDP growth, and broad-based development that flow from these balanced economies when you've got a large manufacturing sector and you're not only dependent on commodity cycles, the rise and fall of mineral prices to drive your economy. So that point has been well taken. And we've pointed to particular value chains where the contribution of critical minerals has assisted. But we've gone one step further, and that is to show in some cases how integrated the supply chains are. That I met with one American Congress representative whose family business is in the auto industry, and I was able to take that representative through examples of how the AGOA assists us to get cars into the United States, yes, but at the same time, AGOA also provides an opportunity for American companies to supply components to South Africa that goes into the vehicles, not only that goes to the United States, but vehicles that are sold here in South Africa and other parts of the world. So it's to point to the mutually reinforcing economic benefit that comes from these kind of strategic relationships. On the geopolitics, we've made the argument for a world that needs to remain open, for trade that needs to be even across countries that have political differences, that the division of the world into two camps is not in the interest of humanity, that economic growth and openness are promoted by people trading with each other, investing with each other. And so South Africa has become a proponent of a multilateral system. And there are significant voices in the United States that take that point, that recognizes the importance of avoiding geopolitical polarization to harden to the point where you have what is called friendshoring, where you only procure from your friends, you only trade with your friends. History over thousands of years have shown that human beings fare better when they engage across divides rather than retreat into their trenches and engage with each other only through war and fierce competition. So it's about making those points. It's about showing that the United States itself benefits from this. The world benefits from engagement between nations. The other risks relate to potential trade disputes. There's always matters that one or the other party has a challenge with. So we will no doubt see these matters will be raised. Sometimes there will be on other policy issues like copyright, which has come up in the past. It came up in the discussion on GSP. We've tried to make sure that obviously Parliament in South Africa is sovereign. Parliament made a decision on the copyright bill a number of years ago, and it's now going through Parliament, having been revised to take constitutional concerns into account, which just, I think, also helps to show that we're a rule of law country, that we recognize and respect property rights, but that we also ensure that property rights are exercised in a way consistent with what happens in democracies. So I'm very positive. We have a strong working relationship that we've affirmed with the United States. We work together on matters of global trade policy. We have American businesses that want to expand their operations in South Africa, and it's about investing in all of that relationships. The AGOA Forum is an important symbolic moment to show that we're able to not only protect what we have, but we want to scale up the economic relationship with the United States, do even more by way of investment, trade, technology partnerships, and beneficiation of South African raw materials here on the African continent that can then be sold in other parts of the world. And we can use American technology, we can use American capital to help us develop that beneficiation drive that we need. Because as the world makes this big shift to a greener economy, Africa is well positioned because we have many of the critical minerals that will be required for that transition. On the rise of protectionism across the world, it is a particular worry to us that there's a difference between when countries use the policy space that they have to deal with a particular sector or industry and assist that sector to recover from market disruption, surges, dumping, or just the need for it to have the structural transformation to grow better. That's different to a protectionism that tries to shut out the world, that sees no value in trade and development between countries. And we're certainly putting a particular view across. Honorable Murray also asked the question about the impact that AGOA, or the absence of AGOA, or South Africa's exclusion from AGOA will have on regional development. And the truth is that the example of AGOA's success is often the example of South Africa. And I gave the example, and I will be providing a bit more detail in November at the AGOA forum to my counterparts in the US, how an integrated value chain ensures that the benefits of AGOA to neighboring countries is often via this regional value chain that South Africa takes part in. And I provided information to my counterparts in the United States that shows that Botswana, as an example, exports more manufactured products via South Africa that goes into South African value chains, some of which then gets exported to the United States, than what it does directly in its export of manufactured products to the United States. So if South Africa was taken out, many neighboring countries would suffer quite significant losses. And we'll be making that argument in our engagement with our American counterparts on a broader basis in November. Honorable Moimang makes a good point about the need for common messages. I have, as I indicated, Honorable Moimang, I was really very struck by the tremendous unity of purpose that I find from all the provinces. It's something that I think we can build on. Honorable Moimang then asks, if one had to do scenario planning, contrast status quo, in other words, we continue with AGOA, compare that with the end of AGOA, compare that with reimagining the economic relationship. And Honorable Mbuyani takes the same concept but turns it into the language of risk management and asks, what are the implications if AGOA is not extended? What mitigation are we putting in place? And it's a theme that Honorable Khai picks up. It's a theme that Honorable Tring picks up. And it's one that I think a number of other honorable members have referred to directly or indirectly. Now, our view is that we believe there's a compelling case to be made for AGOA to be extended, for it to be extended with all existing beneficiary countries continuing in AGOA. And in that context, obviously what we're doing is putting the weight of our effort into making that point, putting forward that point of view to our American counterparts. At the same time, all countries and all regions always seek to de-risk. And one of the key ways of de-risking is to deal with, well, there's a few that I can point to. The first one is in our economic relationship, whether it's with the United States or with China, they're both quite important economic relationships. They contribute very significantly to our export earnings and to our GDP growth. But we need to ensure that we de-risk, because any of these economies may have their own challenges in future, or there may be other factors that limit the ability to access the growth potential for South Africa in those markets. So our focus on the African Continental Free Trade Area, it's a matter that Honorable Bergman also picked up on, is very important. It's about, if I look at the trade profiles of successful industrializing countries across the world, one of the striking things is the importance that's attached to trade with direct neighbors. The European Union, for example, more than 70% of its trade is with neighbors. In the case of both Southeast Asia as well as North America, it accounts for a very significant part. Historically, the African continent's intra-African trade was very limited, and there was a very clear reason for it. We were all, or mostly, we were mineral-producing and oil-producing countries. And one oil producer can't sell oil to another oil producer. A country that does copper as its main economic focus has nothing that it can trade with to a country whose main economic activity is platinum. Trade is fostered when economies become diversified, when you have more manufacturing taking place across the African continent. In other words, African industrialization will foster greater trade between African countries, and greater trade between African countries can support African industrialization. They're mutually reinforcing. So our de-risking strategy with all of our global economic relationships is by focusing a lot more on developing the African market. When Nigeria grows, it is good for South Africa. When Egypt grows, it's good for South Africa. We don't see on the African continent a zero-sum game. We see value that we can obtain by neighboring countries also growing. And so I will be speaking later this afternoon at a IDC annual report presentation where their financial report will come out. And we've encouraged the IDC, for example, to invest in other African countries in order to ensure that the growth potential of the continent helps to build a massive African market that we can all benefit from. Honorable Tring also made the point about intra-African trade. The second part of de-risking is to build up the efficiency and the competitiveness of our sectors. The stronger a manufacturing base is, or an agricultural base is, the less dependent it will be on the additional preference. And scale is important. When we produce for a small market, we've got great farmers in South Africa. We've got great manufacturers in South Africa, but they can never compete with people who have enormous scale unless they have favorable weather conditions or there are other advantages that they can rely on. So we've got to play to our advantages. In Limpopo, we've got some great opportunities on certain kinds of fruit, like avocados. We've just signed a protocol that allows us to export more avocados. The Western Cape has a significant industry of peaches and apples and citrus fruit also in the Eastern Cape. These are all examples of us playing to our strengths. But if we build up the greater competitiveness, we build that agriculture value chain with more processing facilities, storage facilities, and we're able to ensure that we've got the necessary plant health and animal health services at our universities. These all help to give us a degree of risk management against challenges that may occur in external markets. The third leg of it is building our own industrialization, that we are quite a trade exposed economy. That brings us many benefits. But as we localize more of the products that we have in the past allowed to wither, to shrink, to weaken, products that South Africans are capable of producing, we then create more economic dynamic in South Africa. We're able to get more bounce in our domestic market, which also provides us with a degree of risk management against any external challenges that we have less influence on or less control on. Now, I've deliberately not spoken of these as risks only in relation to the United States. They're risks that we can face with any major economy. And COVID-19 showed us that the world is an uncertain place. The war in Ukraine showed us that you cannot always predict what will be happening tomorrow. And so the country has to de-risk. And in our work in the DTIC, we're putting more effort now on what we call building a more resilient economy. Last week in New York, I was at an event where we officially launched an announcement by Novo Nordisk, which is a Danish company, to produce human insulin here in South Africa. And this is an important step because it will be the first time that human insulin is produced in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's an example of industrialization of us not just being a consumer market, but producing products that are used in South Africa and on the continent. And this will be done at a very advanced facility in Gqeberha. So there's also a strong Eastern Cape positive bounce out of this announcement. Honorable Khaya, I know that you'd be pleased to know that. So the point we make is that de-risking is a necessary element of a world that has become more volatile, more uncertain. And while we de-risk, we must try to maintain access to what we have. So AGOA is an important means of promoting development in South Africa and on the African continent. And it is something that we value, and it is something that we would want to put forward very strongly in our conversations with our colleagues. So for us, the option of AGOA expiring is not a good one. And while we'll always risk mitigate, at the same time, we'll put our energy into making every effort that AGOA should be renewed. Honorable Malimacha asked a question, which is there a trade-off where access to a benefit like AGOA comes with constraining our ability to have the independence to trade with all countries? Now, trade rules are governed by the World Trade Organization. And in addition to that, we've taken the view as South Africa that when it comes to sanctions, these need to be sanctions that are agreed at the United Nations level. And broadly speaking, we've seen that in many instances, countries have taken a pragmatic view. Countries across the world are still using products that come from countries that they don't agree with. There are pressures to end this, but we do think that there is value in us putting forward the benefits to all countries of a more open rather than a more closed global trading regime. Honorable Malemacha, the American heads of state don't come to AGOA forums. President Biden did refer to AGOA very strongly in his Leaders Summit meeting that he held in December last year. So the American delegation will have cabinet members from the US. Honorable Bergman, I've covered the issue of trade-offs because I think it is important that as South Africa, in the conduct of our policy, that we recognize that there are consequences to what we say and how we say it, and that our focus and our effort must be to advance the South African national interest. And the South African national interest must also speak to jobs and to economic growth. And so how we craft whatever we craft has to be within a framework that advances the interests of South Africans and South Africa and our own economy in doing all of this. On the matter of South Africa playing a role in promoting peace on the African continent, I think we do have a positive role, and this is recognized by heads of state from many countries. When we are at the African Union, then I hear countries recognizing this. We've been, as South Africa, we've played quite a key role in trying to mediate between the warring groups in South Sudan and played a role in stabilizing South Sudan. We played a very positive role in Ethiopia. We provided the resources and the platform for different groups to engage with each other. In Mozambique, these matters are matters that I think we can be positive about South Africa's role in the DRC in ensuring stability there. There are other instances. So I think the story around South Africa's role on the continent is widely recognized. It's recognized by the United Nations. It's recognized by the United States administration and by many other groups in other parts of the world. I've been in meetings where heads of state have recognized and valued those. Honorable van der Westhuizen raised the question whether we have fears that South Africa would be excluded based on its per capita income. And I want to just highlight something that flows from Honorable van der Westhuizen's question. And that is, when we set out the risks, it doesn't mean we agree with the underlying assumptions that a particular interest group or lobbyist may have. But we put it out there by recognizing that that is an argument that will come up. In our response to that, South Africa has gone into detail, not only on per capita income, but also identifying the significant challenges of poverty and of unemployment that we continue to face. Even in the AGOA forum, I've extended an invitation to our American counterparts to visit projects in townships and rural areas that will show the challenges that many South Africans face. And when we have visitors, we take them to more than Sandton. In fact, this conference will be held in Nazareth. And it's also about showing that there's another part to South Africa that is not always the first thing that a visitor sees when they're in Sandton. And that must also help to make the point that on socioeconomic grounds, there's a compelling case for South Africa to continue to have access to AGOA. Honorable Nkondlo really put forward a view that I can only endorse, and that is that our big project, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, can benefit from the extension of AGOA. And conversely, Or on the other hand, I can also say AGOA itself can be more successful as a result of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And I say that because one of the concerns that have been raised by American policymakers is that after 3 terms of AGOA, they've not seen a significant bounce in industrial exports to the United States, with the exception of South Africa. They recognize South Africa, there's been quite a significant uptake, but they say that outside of South Africa, they've not seen as much use of AGOA. And we've made the point that part of the challenge has been that Africa's structural feature as a export of raw materials means that it can't benefit from AGOA to the extent that we would like our continent to benefit, because raw materials, many raw materials are not covered by AGOA because there are generally no tariffs on many of those raw materials. So because the AfCFTA is going to drive an industrialization agenda for the African continent, it gives us an opportunity for more integrated regional value chains that will have the same benefit that I spoke of that South Africa's car industry gives. We can now do that with many other value chains and get those products onto the shelves of American consumers. Turning next to the comment that Honorable Nkondlo made about the graduation out of AGOA, it's also a matter that came up from Honorable Ghai, and I would say that one of the conversations we've had with the US, not for South Africa specifically, but for all African countries, is whether there can be a more gradual graduation process where countries begin to meet the per capita income measure, instead of it being a binary that you completely qualify or you're completely disqualified. There may be some gradual phasing out that can be considered. These are all matters that would be the subject of discussion over the next 12 months with the US administration and Congress, and we'll clearly would be looking forward to getting the views of Congress representatives also on this. On the Honorable Nkondlo, the question of the views of my African trade minister colleagues, I think we have a very united view on the value that AGOA can provide to our own efforts with the African Continental Free Trade Area. Honorable Mbuyane has raised the issue of how do we deal with copyright and matters of self-determination. We've taken a very government as a whole is bounded by and has to work within the constitutional framework of South Africa. And so when it comes to laws that are passed, we can draw attention to the risks and the challenges, but at the end of the day, Parliament makes the decisions on the laws, and we would take into account how to frame laws in a way that is consistent with our Constitution. We think on copyright, our Constitution provides wide protection for property, and that the concerns that there is in the United States, we believe would be adequately addressed by South Africa's legal and constitutional frame. On poultry, when the facts indicated that there was a level of dumping from American poultry, we took the decision, we've taken the decision on anti-dumping duties, whether they apply to China, whether they apply to Brazil, whether they apply to the European Union, whether they apply to the United States, because the World Trade Organization has a set of criteria that is used. But we did recognize in our engagement with the United States that there was grounds for providing a quota which is a quantitative level of poultry imports that would not be subject to the anti-dumping duties. And that assisted American poultry producers, but it also limited the potential harm to South African poultry producers because it was constrained. And recently, I attended a meeting that I will hopefully have an opportunity to brief the Portfolio Committee in more detail in KZN at Rainbow Chickens, where we were able to see the benefits of our trade measures with 750 workers that have been employed in the company following an initial massive retrenchment that had taken place in 2017. After we adopted the Poultry Master Plan and we put in place support for South African poultry producers, we've seen a complete turnaround in that company in Hammersdale in KZN. Honorable Gai, on the matter of the South Africa as a gateway, I think one of the key things that we will do more of is build regional value chains with other African countries, because our own prosperity depends on greater industrialization across the African continent. In respect of World Trade Organization rules, AGOA has a specific, shall I call it, exemption. It is consistent, let me put it this way, it's consistent with WTO rules. It was tabled in the WTO at the time when AGOA was first put in place. On subsidies, this is a matter that is coming up more and more in discussions, but the contours have shifted. In the past, the critique globally was that developing countries were putting in place subsidies on industrial goods. And from the developing world, our concern was that developed countries were putting subsidies into agriculture. More recently, we've seen a massive injection of subsidies to green industries coming from developed countries. This will be no doubt a matter that will form quite a bit of, it will, in a way, industrial policy is back with a bang, with more countries recognizing that there needs to be a partnership between the state and the private sector to utilize the opportunities that come from these new industries. Honorable Tring raised the question whether the different visits to the United States have been helpful. I think without any question, they have been helpful, Honorable Tring. We found that whether we spoke with a Republican senator or Democratic House of Representatives, there was a greater appreciation of some of the complexities that South Africa needs to navigate, a better understanding also of our a non-aligned status. And I think it was also deeply appreciated that in a country like South Africa, rule of law is important, and that the president took the effort to set up a panel with a very respected retired judge that was recognized as a way in which a democracy deals with issues that have come up. On the question raised by Honorable Khalil Brinkhuis on the forum, I can only endorse the view that you've put, Honorable Member, about the importance of the November forum and the decision to proceed with the forum. And the forum is typically one where trade ministers from, in this case, about 30 African countries will meet with effectively the trade minister of the United States and other senior officials of the US Congress. And we will see, I would love to see some type of participation by provinces, typically the national delegations would not be made up of provincial representatives, but there is a important event there, which is the Made in Africa exhibition, where I would really welcome getting all the provinces to have companies showcase there. And we'll see what we can do within the protocols of these events to highlight opportunities for provincial participation in the event. Honorable Macheke has spoken on behalf of what would be the host province, Gauteng, and I'm sure that we will have the full support of Gauteng, and thank you for raising that in welcoming our visitors and giving them a good experience of South Africa. It's both our American visitors, but also visitors from a number of other African countries that we look forward to host. And thank you also for the warm wishes that you've given. So, honorable members, the discussion has highlighted the interest. I hope that we can continue to work closely with provinces, with social partners like business and labor. I was delighted to see South African businesses coordinating the messaging in the United States, and the labor movement itself engaging with their counterparts in the American labor movement on this. We will also have a business component to the forum. We will have African and American business people engaging with each other, and we'll have a labor forum where trade unions from across the continent and their counterparts in the United States can also share ideas on how AGOA has benefited the creation of employment and the improvement in the quality of employment across the continent. Well, thank you very much, Chairperson. May I then hand back to the Chair?
Thank you very much, Minister, for this briefing. I see there's a hand from Honorable Murray. Do you have a follow-up question? We just take note that the members of the Select Committee has started their plenary session, but I will entertain this last question, Honorable Murray.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. I do have so many questions, but I do note the plenary constraints. Chair, first follow-up is in terms of Western Cape exports, we arguably stand to lose the most in this front. And what work has been done with DIRCO to ensure that GSP and AGOA-related trade are not undermined by geopolitical tensions? Similarly, how many jobs in different sectors, especially agriculture and automotive industries, depend on AGOA? And if SA is excluded, what would the consequences be? And lastly, Chair, should South Africa be included in the next AGOA agreement? My understanding from the Minister's response is that this is quite likely given that the summit will take place in South Africa. What will our next steps be to improve trade relations with the US? How can we better leverage AGOA to support our local and regional economy? And should we not maybe be looking at establishing a free trade agreement of our own with the US? Thank you for your indulgence, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Thring, follow-up question.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, mine is just one follow-up. Minister, if possible, can you clarify on the impact, if any, of the copyright bill on the AGOA discussions? So what is the impact of the copyright bill on our AGOA discussions? Thank you.
What is your proposal now?
Can we ask Ifan Rienen to mute, please, from the DTIC? Minister, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Chairperson. On the question of Honourable Murray's comments on GSP and AGOA, I think DIRCO is working with their US counterparts on matters of mutual interest. So there's an ongoing engagement between Secretary Blinken and Minister Pandor. On the matter of jobs and AGOA, there are a number of different ways of looking at this. I've seen some industries calculating what they believe to be their vulnerability. With these things, I do recognize that every industry will put forward the worst case scenario. And given all of our challenges, we've got to focus on jobs. The Americans have done their own analysis on jobs, and their numbers in the past on the, let's call it the jobs enhancing effects of AGOA, are very different to what has been done by many specific sectors. I want to take the debate away from there, because then it gets to be the Americans say this, the South Africans say that, into one that makes it a unifying thing for all South Africans, that it's in our interest to have AGOA extended. It's in our interest for South Africa to continue to be covered by AGOA. On the next steps on AGOA, well, I have put out a slide at the end of the presentation that sets out the various actions that we're going to take. And there is opportunity for South Africa to utilize AGOA more effectively. And that means trying to build stronger networks of support between South African exporters, utilizing some of the new market opportunities that will come as we industrialize, as we build new capability in different sectors of our economy. We have also a wider portfolio of products that we can sell to the United States. On question of free trade agreement, the view that has been taken by African countries is that our immediate focus now should be on the African continental free trade area. And once we've bedded that down, then we can look at other major agreements with other parts of the world. So we're trying to coordinate as much as we can and wherever we can with other African countries to form a common position on these matters. On the question raised by Honorable Tring, the copyright bill has not come up directly in any discussions on AGOA. It came up under the GSP discussions previously, where there was a hearing that was held in Washington in early 2020, where the matter of South Africa's copyright bills was raised by some players in the United States. So, for example, if I recall, it may have been the music producers or the film producers, Motion Picture Association would have raised some concerns. On the other hand, companies, American companies like Google and Facebook would have supported the South African legislation and pointed out why they think it's helpful to the flow of information. So it's not come up directly in AGOA. Of course, at this stage, our focus is really on the broader argument on extension. I'm sure that there will be, in the next 12 months, a number of issues that come through. So AGOA expires in 2025. In the previous extension of AGOA, it took place quite late. It took place very close to its expiry. And this is a decision ultimately of the US Congress. And the US Congress is a very diversified group of public representatives. Even within one party in the United States, they can have very different views. And so this is not something that we can, as South Africa, completely influence. We can put forward our views, we can engage constructively, but the American political system is a complex system to navigate. With most countries, we would deal directly with governments, and it would be decisions governments make. You can sit across the table and negotiate an outcome. In the United States, we recognize there are many different additional elements to decision making, and that Congress plays a very different role than what it does in a parliamentary democracy like the South African one. So we have to accommodate ourselves to the reality of the American political system in a matter where there's unilateral market access like AGOA, and of course engage as constructively as we can. I hope that has responded to the issues that have been raised. Thank you very much. And may I then hand back to the Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. Yes, Ms. Murray, I'm not going to take further questions at this stage. I think you can submit further questions in writing, but we all have to be aware that the Select Committee who's actually hosted this joint meeting is already off the platform and in the plenary session. So thank you very much, Minister. I'm sure that after the November forum, given that AGOA is the cornerstone of US trade policy in Africa, and I think we will then schedule a further follow-up, maybe just feedback as these two joint committees. So thank you very much to everyone, to the Minister and all the provinces, and the Select Committee for facilitating this session here today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Just a point of order.
I've closed the meeting. Thank you very much. Please direct further questions in writing.
It is a point of order, Chair.
I've closed the meeting. There can't be a point of order after I've closed the meeting.
My hand was raised prior, but I will happily communicate that to the Select Committee, Chair.
Okay, thank you very
but
much.
you must learn to respect the Chair. You must respect.
Thank you very much, Chair. Bye.
Long live the Chair. Long live the Chair.
Indeed, indeed.
Thank you to the Chair. Thank you to all the honourable members.
Thank you, colleagues. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.